Hi everyone, Matt Watson here. Lots of people like to modify their car to improve their performance, be that improved handling, improved speed, improved braking. The only thing is though that some people spend money on things that really have no effect and are rather pointless. And with that in mind, here are the Car Wow most pointless tuning modifications. Everyone thinks that big wheels mean better. That's better looks, which they sort of do, and better performance. But that's not always the case. Now, certain cars are designed to have big wheels. For instance, an Audi RS-Q8 can have wheels up to 23 inches in diameter. However, there is still a maximum for that car, which is the 23 inches. And for other cars, there is a maximum as well. If you go beyond that, you will actually raise the car's ride height slightly. Another thing you'll do is mess up the diameter of the wheel. So your gearing will be out and your speedometer will be out as well. Now the thing about bigger wheels, even those within manufacturer's guidelines, the fact is that as you increase the diameter of the rim, you therefore reduce the amount of sidewall of the tyre. So you have a low profile tyre. That means the car won't be so comfortable over bumps. Another thing about making the wheel size bigger is that it does increase your tyre size, so that means your tyres are more expensive. You will have more of a contact patch with the road because you've got more tyre on the road. The downside is though that the wheel and tyre combination gets heavier the bigger the wheel gets. And that means you've got more unsprung mass. And more unsprung mass is not a good thing because it can affect a car's handling, it can affect the feeling of the steering and the amount of communication the car gives you while you're driving. So while you may have more grip, it won't necessarily mean that the car is more fun. That's why for my Porsche 911, I've kept on 17s because it actually handles a bit sweeter than with 18s, even though they give you a bit more grip and they do look slightly better. Some people like to stand out their cars by giving them lots of negative camber. Now camber is the angle of which the wheel sits to the ground, so negative camber slopes the wheels inwards like that. The idea is that when you're going around a corner, the car leans and so that outer wheel then ends up upright, which means you have a maximised contact patch of the tyre with the ground. So that's good for handling. Now that does apply to race cars, but you don't want too much negative camber on a road car. Reason being is that most of the time you're going in a straight line, so your contact patch with the ground is reduced because the wheel is at an angle. Another thing that's a problem with it is that even if you're on a racetrack, if you have too much negative camber, then you're never going to get the wheel in the right position to have the full contact patch with the ground, even when you're cornering. Also, they mess up their car's braking because if you think about it, mostly you're braking in a straight line. And if your wheels are like that, then there's less tyre touching the ground for gripping when you're braking, which isn't ideal. Another thing with lots of camber is that it can put stress on your suspension components because the wheels are at a wonky angle. Also, it doesn't help the wheel bearings either, they have to work a bit harder. Adding lots of negative camber to your car to stance it out will ruin the performance and make it a little less safer as well. A lot of people like to replace the paper air filter in their car's airbox with a performance type which is less restrictive. The idea being it'll let more air into the engine so you can add more fuel and therefore you get more power. Makes sense. But it doesn't always work like that. And I can vouch for that myself because I fitted a performance air filter to my Porsche 996, and while it increased the horsepower at the very top end by about 1 or 2 horsepower, basically an increase I would never feel, it actually reduced the horsepower slightly lower down in the rev range, which meant overall the car was producing less horsepower, especially in the most drivable range, the mid-range. So it was pointless. It did sound good though. The thing about performance air filters is that while they will let more air in for the very top end, sometimes in the middle of the rev range you need a little bit more resistance for the engine to work properly. Now another thing about these performance air filters is the fact they're supposed to be reusable. In order to reuse them you have to clean them and then you re-oil them. Because while they do allow more air through, one of the ways that they trap air is that they have oil on them and that picks up grit and dust particles. The only problem is that sometimes that oil can enter the air intake, and if you have a mass airflow meter within the air intake, like my Porsche does, it can foul that and then you need to replace that thing, which is very expensive. And even before it needs replacing, you'll probably notice your car running badly because this sensor will not be able to work properly. So your performance air filter will actually make your car run worse. Brilliant. Now, there are systems that do improve your car's performance, and they are cold air intake systems. What they do is move the point at which you suck air into the car away from the engine so it's in a cooler part of the engine bay. Cooler air is more dense, which has more oxygen in, which improves the burn of the fuel. However, for it to work properly, you also need to do it in conjunction with an ECU tune to tell the car's engine to provide more fuel and get the air-fuel mixture balanced just right. Now, these do cost quite a lot of money, so people try to bypass it with a ram air intake, which sort of looks the same with a cone filter. Unfortunately, they don't do the whole thing of separating out the hot air from the cold air within the engine bay, and so you end up sucking hot air into the engine, and these then usually result in less power overall. So if you're thinking about fitting a aftermarket panel filter, by all means do. You may get a few horsepower. You'll also get a nicer induction noise, but it isn't going to be any kind of performance gains you're going to feel. And in fact, you could end up with less performance like I did. We all know that lowering a car lowers the center of gravity, which will improve the handling. And this is true, though it does depend on how you go about lowering the car. You see, if you do it on the cheap with spring clamps, which basically shorten the car's original springs by clamping them down, that won't work. In fact, it could be dangerous. You see, a car's springs and dampers are set up to work together. If you alter the spring by lowering it and put it under strain constantly, it's not going to work as well with the damper. Another thing that might happen is that you clamp it down too much, and if you go over a big bump or a hill or a humpback bridge, the spring could become unseated from its mount, which is clearly very dangerous. Also, by running along with your spring under compression, it wears the spring out, it wears the damper out, and your suspension could fail early. Now, if you want to lower your car, you need to get yourself some proper lowering springs, appropriate dampers to go with them, or maybe go with some coilovers, or if you want to go the whole hog and really slam your car, how about something like Air Ride, where you can actually alter the height of it using the air suspension system. Remapping a car's ECU is a good way to get it to make more power. After all, the ECU is the car's brain. It controls things such as ignition timing, the amount of fuel going into the engine, the rev limiter, the boost pressure from the turbocharger if one's fitted. So it makes sense that that will work, and it does, and you can get some good gains. Now, certain tuning companies such as Mount Tune and Apt work with manufacturers so that they can fit these things to your car without it affecting the warranty, which is superb. We actually did this on a Seat Cupra, and we got an increase of 50 horsepower over the standard car, and it was really noticeable. And it's cost 500 quid, which seems like great value for money. Yet some people want to save money. They don't want to pay 500 quid for some real performance gains. So instead they go on the internet and they look for tuning chips. Now, the way these are supposed to work is that they plug into the car's ECU and they alter the signal going from the engine intake temperature to tell the car's ECU the temperature of the intake and make it think that it's actually cooler than it is. So the car thinks, wait a minute, we've got more dense air, we can shove more fuel into the engine, and as a result, the car should make more power. That's the theory, but it doesn't work. Part of the reason it doesn't work is that these boxes are nothing more than a placebo effect. Just a little box with a flashing LED, which you wire in, and they don't actually do anything. So at best, you're going to get no performance gains. But at worst, if you're hacking this thing into your car's wiring loom, then you could damage it. If you want to increase your performance, go for a proper ECU tune. Some people think you can improve a car's performance by fitting specialist spark plugs. Now, if your car's spark plug is failing, then the car won't run properly. That's a given. However, if it's working properly, no performance spark plug will work better than a normal spark plug. All a spark plug does is provide a spark, and if the spark is sufficient, it'll do the same job regardless of the kind of spark it produces. Simple. It just starts the process of burning the fuel. What really matters for performance is the timing of the spark and the fuel-air mixture ratio. That's it. The spark doesn't. Good aerodynamics help a car's top speed, and they also make it more stable when you're going quickly. And of course, it does improve the fuel efficiency. And sports cars have specially honed aerodynamics to help them slip to the air as well as possible, while also reducing lift so they stick to the road better for enhanced handling. However, don't go thinking that you can improve your car's handling by just bolting on a spoiler or a front splitter. It will not work. When these things are fitted by manufacturers on race cars or sporty road cars, they have undergone hundreds of hours of development in a wind tunnel to make sure they do their job properly. Some random piece of kit just bolted onto your car which you found on the internet will not help. You may think it looks faster, but it'll probably make it slower because some aftermarket wing will cause drag, so it'll be slower in a straight line. Also, it'll add weight either at the front or the back of the car, which will reduce the handling. And while you might think that these devices will produce downforce, there is a chance that they may do the opposite and increase the car's lift. Catalytic converters are fitted to cars' exhaust systems to reduce the nasty emissions coming out the tailpipe. What they essentially are a honeycomb structure which the air goes through, but as it's basically an obstruction in the exhaust, you'd think that by removing it you get freer airflow, so more air could pass through the engine, so you get more power. However, if you remove your car's catalytic converter, you'll probably get less power. Reason is that when the car is being set up by the manufacturer, it's designed to run with the catalytic converter in place, and so is accounting for the back pressure you get from that. If you remove it, that is taken away and the car probably won't run as well as it should do. However, if you've done some other performance mods, such as changed the cams or fitted a bigger turbo, removing the catalytic converter can give you some more power, but only if the car's ECU has been reprogrammed to account for that. And anyway, removing a catalytic converter on a road car is illegal, and it means it won't pass its MOT. When manufacturers make sporty versions of their normal cars, they often increase the car's track slightly. So this is the distance between the wheels across an axle. An example is a BMW M4, which has a slightly wider track than the normal 4 Series. Reason being that slightly wider track means that the car is better balanced in the corners because it's slightly wider. So people think that they can do the same by fitting spacers to their normal car. Now, you can get away with fitting spacers to cars of up to 2 centimeters. It should be fine. What it does, it pushes the wheels out and it can make the car look better, but it doesn't actually necessarily improve the handling, because when car manufacturers are working out the track width, they've done loads of maths with the steering geometry, the geometry of the suspension, and lots of other things that you and I just won't understand. And by pushing the car's wheels out, you're actually altering the geometry of the car, which can in turn make it handle worse. And if you fit oversized spacers, big ones like some people do, then you could actually make your car's handling so much worse that it's dangerous. By pushing the wheels out, you are putting more strain on the wheel bolts, which are holding the wheels on. It also puts more strain on the other suspension components as well, so it's generally not a good idea. The octane rating of a fuel tells you how much compression it can have within the engine before it pre-ignites. Now, pre-ignition is a bad thing. It will damage your engine. You want to control burn, which is started by the spark plug. Now, if you have a higher octane rated fuel, you can compress that fuel air mixture a little bit more before pre-ignition, which means that you can actually bring your spark in later, so you've got really compressed fuel air mixture for a maximum burn and more power. So people think, why not just add an octane booster to my fuel? Just tip it in there, and therefore the car will be able to compress the fuel air mixture more and I'll get more power. But it doesn't work like that. You see, from the factory, the cars are set up to run on a certain minimum octane rating. And if you put octane rating in higher than that, it won't give you more power. Now, it probably will give you slightly better economy because the fuel is burning more efficiently with a higher octane rating, but the cars are set up to deliver a certain maximum amount of power as standard. So it's just a waste of time putting this octane rating in. However, it isn't a waste of time if you've had your car specifically tuned to run on a higher octane rating. So using a high octane fuel can work if your car's ECU has been specifically tuned to do that, but it does mean that you are stuck to run on the higher octane fuel. And just using an octane booster to get up to that higher rate won't actually do the job either, because you can't be sure that overall you will have a sufficient octane rating from your fuel. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a like. Also, let me know in the comments below if there are any mods which are a waste of time which I've missed. Also, let me know of any of the mods that I've listed in this video which you have actually mistakenly done to your car. I've done a few myself. Now, if you want to watch more videos, just click on the windows below. If you click over there, you can download the CarWow app, which includes a car valuation tool where you can use your phone's camera to scan a car's number plate and it'll tell you how much that car is worth. Download it, it's completely free. Also, if you look in the carousel below the video, you'll see our new merch where you can check out some of our latest t-shirt designs.